South Carolina Congressman Jim Clyburn launching a full-court press on the issue of voting rights. Clyburn, of course, is emerging as the Biden whisperer because it was Clyburn who told Biden that he could move black electors if he announced he was going to put a black woman on the Supreme Court. His new message to black America: Biden is doing a good job, you just don't know it. Our panel is back. Adam, Ameshia, Quincy. Adam, I'll begin with you. As a libertarian, as someone who says that you are not Democrat or Republican, what is it that Joe Biden is not doing that you want him to do, and how would you get him across the finish line to do it?
Sure. Well, are you talking in terms of voting rights specifically, or do you mean in general?
In general.
Okay. Well, I'd love to see him govern the way he campaigned. He campaigned as somebody who was going to bring the country together, not be a radical. And for me personally, I was excited about that. I really thought, particularly if we had divided government and Republicans held the Senate, we would get the parties to work together and would end with the crazy extremes with where we swing back and forth from one side to another. I would have liked to have seen him to have supported COVID treatment protocols as much as he supported the vaccines. I'm incredibly pro-vaccine, but for whatever reason, they didn't give us speedy as an approach to all the new pills that can treat COVID. I don't know why they didn't do that, except because they solely wanted to push the vaccines. So I think if he were to move away from the far left in his party and to try to walk across the aisle, it would put the Republicans in a position in which, if they didn't work with a moderate president, they would look like the extremists.
So, Ameshia, I will be the moderator because that's actually what I get paid to do, and point out that on the other side of the aisle, there's not an olive branch that is being extended. It's more like a pickaxe.
No, absolutely. We do not have a functioning Republican Party in this country that is even willing to come to the table, not to negotiate, not to offer up alternative ideas. They're just stalling and not moving at all. And for our friendly libertarian over here, he's sounding a whole hell of a lot like a conservative or mainstream Republican right now. I go back to the last segment. I think that I take issue with the fact that standing for civil rights, standing for human rights, standing for women's reproductive rights is somehow considered radical in an era where a lot of our rights, particularly as minorities, are being chipped away at on a daily basis. I would argue that the Constitution is to protect all of us Americans, and that includes those who are black and brown, especially us black people who continually see our rights being stripped away. And to have a Supreme Court justice, to have any elected official, including the President of the United States, take stances that are to support this group that continues to be subjugated across America does not make him a radical. It makes him stand for what the Constitution says.
Quincy, you're running on the Republican ticket in Nashville, and yet the Republican Party in 19 states is trying to undo the rights and protections of people who look like you and me when it comes to the issue of voting. What is the first conversation you're going to have with Jim Clyburn about what you plan to do to make sure that that is undone?
That's very simple for me. I'm a business guy, man. So by natural trade, I'm going to just keep everything 100% as I can. And what I mean by that is keeping everything on an equal standpoint. If we are America, if we truly are Americans, and if they say they want inclusivity, if they want to say they want to be a more welcoming party, well, they're going to have to play ball. It's just that simple. Black people, we are people that, hey, instead of talking about it, you have to show us. And quite frankly, Republicans have not done a good job of showing that in the African American community across this whole country. And they know that. And so a person like me that's coming into this opportunity, guess what? This is my opportunity to blend both sides of these aisles together, because that's just who I am, and that's what I'm made of. I'm not coming to DC to play politics, even though it's part of the game. But I'm not here to play politics.
Mr. Guillette, why is it that when a particular party wants something like childcare or universal PreK or lower prescription drug prices, they are described as leftists? And if that is the case, what is the other side of that argument that you're seeing from the Republican Party?
Well, you bring up a great point with universal PreK, just as the other guest brought up a great point with civil rights. The preeminent civil rights issue of our time is school choice. We have inner city communities where for decades we've spent more and more and more, and the kids learn less and less and less. And what we see is the money just never ends up in the classrooms. The teachers remain underpaid. We just get a bigger, badder, bloated bureaucracy. And if we care about creating opportunities for those inner city people, many of whom, of course, are African American, we should be pushing school choice anywhere we can. And it's an issue that used to be bipartisan. You had prominent Democrat senators like Cory Booker who supported school choice until they wanted to go on the national stage, because the radicals on the left are owned by the teachers unions and simply don't want better education opportunities for those children.
The radicals on the left, once again, my question is, what is radical about people in Congress that push for voting rights reform when voting rights are under fire, that push for universal pre-K? My question wasn't whether or not you thought there were better things out there. My question was, what is radical about people that push for that, and why do we use such inflammatory language in Washington to describe things like that? I mean, the thing about, for instance, cheaper prescription drug prices is supported by 70% of Americans. 70% of Americans want better gun control in the country. 70% of Americans favor things like universal pre-K. Why are those things labeled as radical? Because it scares people. It's not radical. That's actually mainstream.
What we've seen with universal pre-K again and again and again with the statistics is that the only people who benefit from it are those who get paid the salaries, and then the unions that get a portion of the paycheck. Those benefits disappear for children within a couple years. They don't end up benefiting from universal pre-K. If we care about their education, there are better methods, there are less cost-effective methods, and there are methods that can help children achieve their true potential regardless of their skin color. To your point on voting rights, it is radical because Biden knows he can't get that through the House and the Senate, so instead he wants to govern like a dictator and pass an executive order, perhaps. I don't like executive orders when any party does them. That's the kind of thing a dictator does. And if you truly care about an issue like that, you wouldn't want it to be resolved by an executive order, because then the next president can just come in and repeal it. That's not how our country was set up. Our country doesn't hear. We don't elect new dictators to the presidency every 4 years to rule by fiat.
Quincy, welcome to Washington. Adam, Ameshia, Quincy, thanks for being with us.